Hey guys, I'm George, the nice medic gentleman, and it's time for your dose of some fragrance content. Today I felt in the mood of revisiting some really old and cheap fragrances that I've added to my collection throughout, since starting my fragrance YouTube channel. Last night I was kind of craving for something that has a lipsticky iris powdery note in it, so my scent of the night yesterday was a fragrance from the brand of Armaf, which I'm going to show you actually a little bit later on, and that sort of gave me the idea of making this video. So today I'm going to talk about some older Middle Eastern fragrances that have been around for a while, that are real gems in my opinion. And for the start of this list I've included two fragrances from the brand of Lattafa. The first one is called Hayaati, this black Hayaati, because this is a mini line that has a few other fragrances. I think there are a total of 4 of them. I really like this black one, and I also like the golden one, but for today I went with the black one. Now this fragrance is something that will probably very heavily remind you of fragrances like Paco Rabanne's Invictus, for an example. This is done in the same slightly fresh and fruity, bubblegummy sweet type of way, although I find this one to be maybe a little bit fresher than Invictus itself. But this is a very nice fragrance that I've been enjoying quite a lot, although I'm not the biggest fan in the world of the original Invictus. I think this is a nice little cheap gem from from Lattafa. I think it's relevant to this day as long as you don't mind wearing something sweet, something fresh, something bubblegummy, something youthful. This is a great everyday scent, something that you can wear to the gym, for an example, if you want something for the, especially for the warmer months of the year. And basically this is a dumb-rich type of scent as long as you enjoy this bubblegummy style of fragrances. It's fresh, it's sweet, it's youthful, has nice quality, and has pretty decent performance. The other Lattafa fragrance that I've decided to include in today's video is one of those older Lattafa fragrances that used to be quite popular before Lattafa really became popular and exploded when it comes to popularity on the Western markets. It's called Raghba Oud Intense. Now this is an interesting fragrance. When I started being interested into Middle Eastern fragrances, when I started collecting Middle Eastern fragrances, I remember reading about this one, watching quite a few videos about this one, but to be honest, I picked up this quite late in my fragrance journey, a couple of years after I became fascinated by Middle Eastern fragrances. Back then, when I started the channel, I was on a lot tighter budget, so I just was very careful when I was picking up fragrances. I had to watch my budget. Nowadays I can afford to spend more money without getting into financial troubles, and during those past couple of years I finally ended up picking up a bottle of this. I think I got it like a year and a half ago, something like that. But this has been around for quite a long time, and as I said, this fragrance has been around for a while. It has a pretty nice prayer, and this is a very interesting, very Middle Eastern scent that smells sweet, that smells smoky, that has an agar oud note, feels quite woody, and this is a fragrance that personally reminds me a lot of the original Raghba as well, and it's done in a similar way as something like, let's say, Maison Margiela's By the Fireplace, although this is not a By the Fireplace cologne, but it's done in a similar style. So if you like this type of scents, woody scents with some spiciness, with a lot of smokiness, with a lot of sweetness at the same time, this cozy wintertime scents, because this is definitely something that you should only wear in wintertime, in my opinion. I think Raghba Intense to this day is a very interesting offer, although again it's way past its popularity, the peak of its popularity. I still find this fragrance to be a nice and interesting smelling scent from Lattafa. The next one that I've included in today's video comes from the brand of Paris Corner, and it's called Noir de Raghba. Now this is not so old, I think this was released a couple of years ago, but at the rate that new fragrances from the Middle East come out, this can be perceived as something like old school, a couple of years later, simply because of how many new fragrances we get pretty much every day or every week. So 2 years is a lot of time. Now this fragrance is heavily inspired by Montal's Arabian Stonka, and this was, I think, the first Middle Eastern clone of Arabian Stonka. As you can see, my bottle has a slightly sort of a faulty atomizer. Sometimes it's hard to spray this one. And this is, if you are familiar with the original fragrance from Montal, you'll immediately recognize this. This is another very oriental smelling scent that's very heavy on the spices, the saffron note. There's a lot of sweetness, again some agar oud and all that. But this feels different than Raghba Oud Intense. Raghba Oud Intense, for example, is a lot sweeter and a lot more smokier, where this concentrates more on the sugary type of sweetness and more on the spiciness of otherwise somewhat of a distantly similar scent profile. It's an interesting fragrance. Some people find the whole scent profile to be feminine leaning. I personally find it to be perfectly unisex. With some maceration, this also gets the quality and especially the performance also improved quite a lot, and to this day this remains relevant as long as you're looking for an Arabian Stonka clone, and it also remains very cheap. The next one comes from the brand of Afnan, and it's called Rare Carbon, and this was pretty similar. The way that I picked this one up, it was pretty similar to a Raghba Oud Intense. When I started my fragrance journey, my Middle Eastern fragrance journey, Rare Carbon, I used to read and watch a lot about Rare Carbon, but back then it used to be quite expensive. It was hard to find around where I live, and again I had to watch my budget, my fragrance budget quite carefully every month. So quite a lot of time passed since I first learned about this fragrance before I was finally able to get a bottle of it. This fragrance is heavily inspired by none other than Tom Ford's Ombre Leather. And back in the day, I think this used to be probably the most popular clone of Ombre Leather. So, judging by the name, this is a fragrance that heavily relies on the note of leather, but this one has some fruity sweetness, this has some florals to it, a bit of spiciness as well. I find this one to be a little bit more on the floral side, maybe slightly sweeter than Tuscan leather itself, but it offers nice quality, something that you would expect from the brand of Afnan. And back in the day, I think this used to be quite a good seller for Afnan. Nowadays they have other more popular fragrances, but this still remains a great option if you're looking for an ombre leather clone. Now there are cheaper options out there. This is not the cheapest one by far, but again I think you get good quality in return. Something, the quality is something that I associate with the brand of Afnan, and also this offers a very nice quality. So if you like leather based fragrances, this I think is a good option. The next one that I've included in today's video is probably the cheapest one, at least around where I live. Out of all total of 7 fragrances that I've prepared for today's video, it comes from the brand of Sapil, and it's called Bound for Men. And again, this was another fragrance that I heard a lot, that I read a lot, that I watched about a lot before time passed and I was able to get a bottle of this one. The simple reason in this case was because this initially showed up on our markets, but before I could get a bottle it got sold out on the few places that was selling it, and then quite a bit of time passed before this actually popped up again. But then as soon as it popped up, I got a bottle of. This fragrance is a clone of Armani's Code Profumo, and it's surprisingly good and surprisingly cheap at the same time. And Code Profumo and the whole Code line is something that I really enjoy a lot. Most fragrances from that line, and they are Armani fragrances, so they're quite expensive. And Sapil Bound for Men gets surprisingly close to the original fragrance for a fraction of the price. Sometimes around here this could be found for less than $20. In fact, when I got this bottle I paid like $16, $17, something like that. It was crazy cheap. And given the fact that I really like a lot the original fragrance because it's sweet, it's sexy, it's mass appealing, this is a no-brainer if you enjoy that scent profile and if you can get it on your markets. It has, again, surprisingly good quality, and also the performance is pretty good considering how cheap this is as a fragrance. The next one that I've included in today's video holds a bit of a sentimental type of value for me personally. It's from the brand of Armaf, and it's called Odyssey Homme. This is the black one. This and the white one were the two very first videos that I ever uploaded on my channel, so this is where everything started for me personally, and to this day this sort of has a special place in my heart. This fragrance is an interesting creation from Armaf. This will remind you probably a lot of something like Tom Ford's Noir Extreme, although this is not an identical or an exact clone. This serves more like an inspiration. And this also carries a bit of similarities to something like Dior Homme Intense because it has an iris note in it, but definitely this sits closer to Noir Extreme. But it's like a more floral, like a more powdery version of Noir Extreme, and that's where some similarities can be drawn between this one and Dior Homme Intense. I remember reading about this fragrance and watching videos about this one when it popped up. People were comparing this to Dior Homme Intense. Some quite famous reviewers back in the day were sort of selling this one as being a clone of Dior Homme Intense, where in reality this is not a clone of Dior Homme Intense. This sits a lot closer to Noir Extreme. So it's slightly sweet, it's a bit floral, feels a bit powdery, it's quite sort of light and delicate in the area, and can also almost pass as an unisex fragrance that to this day remains an interesting choice if you like this scent profile. The quality is good and the performance is also quite good, something that surprised me back then and still surprises me to this day. And the last fragrance that I've included in today's video is the one that I mentioned in the beginning, the one that actually gave me the idea for this whole video. This was my scent of the day yesterday, scent of the night, excuse me, last night. It comes again from the brand of Armaf and it's called Futura Homme. And this is an interesting fragrance that some people will say that smells like Dior Homme Intense, some people will say that smells like the original Dior Homme, the first iris-based fragrance in that line. I personally find it to be smelling closer to Valentino Uomo and Valentino Uomo Intense, but you get the idea. This is basically a fragrance that relies on a hefty dose of that lipsticky, makeup-y, powdery iris note, and I love it for that. Iris is my sort of most favorite, fragrance note, and I love this fragrance because of how good it smells and because of its strong iris note. No matter if you think of this one as being close to Valentino Uomo and Valentino Uomo Intense, or whether you think it's close to Dior Homme Intense or Dior Homme, doesn't matter again because this has the lipsticky iris note in it. It feels powdery, it feels sweet, it feels floral. There's some oods on the dry down, some additional sweetness. It lacks the leather note from Valentino Uomo Intense, so that's why to me it smells like a mix between Valentino Uomo and Valentino Uomo Intense, and I absolutely love it. Now I don't know if this is still sold, if it's still in production. Some time ago I heard some rumors that this has been discontinued and it's pretty hard to find. But if it's still available on your markets, and if you like fragrances like Dior Homme Intense, Dior Homme and Valentino Uomo Intense, you probably will end up liking this one as well. It offers nice quality and offers pretty solid performance. And so guys, in today's video I showed you 7 cheap old gems that I've collected over the years, found over the years in my collection, and I think are smell still pretty nice to this day. I hope that you found today's video interesting. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me in my next video for your dose of some fragrance content. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.